Good morning. Thanks for joining us on this chilly April morning. I'm Rob Muller, member of the 2U Board of Trustees, and my pronouns are he, him, his. Today, we're in person at the Admiral at the Lake, here in the 2U Sanctuary, and continuing to meet virtually using Zoom. We ask for your indulgence for the complications of a three-part service, which I would note actually work really, really well. We're glad you're here, whichever way you're attending. Following public health guidelines, we've moved to making masks optional in the sanctuary, and we remain committed to creating a safe worship experience. If numbers change or public health recommendations change, we will change our policy as well. We especially welcome newcomers and visitors this morning. Finding a new community and making new connections can be challenging. Please know we're excited to have you and look forward to getting to know you. If you're new today, note that in the Zoom chat or mention it in person during conversation after the service. If you'd like to, there are blue mugs you can use to signal to others that you'd like them to come up and say hello. And even if you're not new, you can use a blue mug too if you want someone to come up and talk to you. I kind of do that sometimes. Otherwise, I'm never quite sure who to talk to. Our worship today is led by 2U member Laura McKee, along with Dave Heckel as worship associate. Music is provided by the 2U choir, Laura McKee, and the director of music, Carl Kennedy. Our time together requires a large group of people who make possible the worship, music, and technical production of our services. They're listed in the order of service, and we thank them for their ongoing service to our community. A couple of quick announcements. Today at 12:15, we'll be holding the first of 3 sessions for new member orientation. If you've been attending church for a few weeks or a few months or more, and have decided this is the place for you, come learn more about 2U, Unitarian Universalism, and the benefits of becoming a member of our congregation. All newcomers are welcome. Ours is a tradition that celebrates an open pulpit. As part of this commitment, we have many people who are not our settled minister preach and share their wisdom with us. Everyone here probably has a sermon or 2 or 3 inside them, and we'd love to hear from you. So if you're thinking you might want to lead a service, please join Reverend Jason on May 7th at 12:30 for an introduction to preaching workshop. Whether you're planning to preach this summer or just want to find out how this works and thinking about doing this at a future date, please join that May 7th at 12:30. Starting next week, we'll be holding services upstairs in the loft. Construction, as many of you know, starts on Monday, so we'll be moving upstairs. Yay! Finally. Finally. It's exciting. So we have to move a bunch of stuff upstairs. If you'd like to hang out after the service and kind of help us with the bucket brigade up the stairs, we'd really appreciate it. We don't have to move the chairs, so it's not gonna be that hard. And finally, last announcement, we are nearing the end of our annual pledge drive. We're in our final days. We are edging in on our goal, so if you haven't had the opportunity to pledge yet, now is the time to do so. And with that, additional announcements in the order of service, and with that, I'd like to welcome Dave Heckel to lead our call to worship.
Unitarian Universalist congregation, a community of children, youth, and adults, a people of many beliefs and traditions, bound not by the specific list of things we believe, but by the values we share. Whether you are joining us for the first time or for the 1,000th time, you are welcome here. Whether you believe in God some of the time, all of the time, or none of the time, you're welcome here. Whatever your race, whomever you love, whichever way you move in the world, however much money is in your pocket, you are welcome here. I invite you now to take a breath in and out. As the music begins, let us enter into our service together.
You choir, we can count on you. In just a moment, Harris at the Admiral and Ryan here will light our chalice. Do you want to come on up, Ryan? We're lighting our chalice this morning with the words of a poem by Richard Branson for entrepreneurs. The road to success is paved with tests, so you've got to believe in yourself above the rest. Dream big, let your passion shine. If you don't, you won't end up with a dime. Challenge the status quo, disrupt the market and say yes. And remember that innovation is an endless quest. If you think with your head and listen with your heart, I promise you'll get off to a flying start. Make bold moves and always play fair. Always say please and thank you. It's cool to care. Do what you love and love what you do. This advice is nothing new. Now stop worrying about whether your business will be a hit. Rise to the challenge and say, let's do it. Please rise in body or spirit and join me in singing number 1007 in the Teal hymnal, There's a River. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my soul. And it's telling me I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my soul. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my heart. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my heart. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing in my mind. And it's telling me that I'm somebody. There's a river flowing in my mind. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing. There's a river flowing in my soul. Dave will now read the words of covenant if you'll join him.
Please remain standing and join me in affirming our covenant. The words will be on your screen.
We covenant to build a community that challenges us to grow and empowers us
to honor the truth within ourselves. We will be generous with our gifts and honest in our communication, holding faithful to a love that embraces both diversity and conflict. Called by our living tradition, we will nurture spirituality within a vision of the eternal, living out our inner convictions through struggles for justice and acts of compassion.
Hymn, number 123, Spirit of Life, in the Gray Hymnal. Spirit of life, come unto me, sing in my heart all the stirrings of compassion, blow in the wind, rise in the sea, move in the hand, giving life the shape of justice. Roots hold me close, wings set me free. Spirit of life, come to me, come to me. And now I welcome Reverend Elizabeth for the Time for All Ages. If anyone feels young or young at heart, come on up.
Good morning, everybody. Today's story is called The Crayon Man, the true story of the invention of Crayola crayons. Who here remembers watching the video on Mr. Rogers of how crayons were made? Now, also, how many of you have used Crayola crayons? So clearly, we are a Crayola community here. Once, there was a man who saw color everywhere. He noticed the yellow-orange petals of the black-eyed Susans in his garden. He marveled at the rich scarlet-red tones of the cardinal's feathers. He admired the deep blue-greens of the waves in the sea. Color made him really, really happy. But all day long at work, all he saw was black. Black dust, black tar, black smoke, black ink, black dye, black shoe polish. His name was Edwin Binney, and he was an inventor. He worked with his cousin, C. Harold Smith. Together, they were Binney and Smith. Harold was a great salesman. He loved to travel the world. Edwin was curious. He had a knack for listening and making what people needed. Edwin invented a new kind of inexpensive slate pencil that wrote very smoothly. It was gray. Children loved it. He invented a kind of chalk that wasn't dusty and didn't crumble. It was white. Teachers loved it. He invented a wax crayon that would write on wood and paper packaging. It was really, really black. People loved it. So when everyone, including Edwin's wife Alice, told him that children needed better, cheaper crayons, he listened. They said, "The crayons we have are big, dull, and clumsy. The lumps of colored clay only make fat, clunky lines. And the artist's crayons from Europe are far too expensive. They crumble and break easily. Some are even poisonous." That's not good for anybody, is it? Edwin thought about his company's inventions. When you drew a picture with their gray slate pencil, it rubbed off at the drop of a hat. When you drew a picture with their white chalk, it smudged everywhere. If you drew a picture with Edwin's new really black crayon, it was, well, really black. None of these inventions was any good for drawing in color. So Edwin listened and Edwin invented. In a small stone mill in Pennsylvania in a top secret lab, Edwin's team experimented. How could they make better, stronger crayons? Melted paraffin wax? Perhaps. Now for the crayon colors, grinding up rocks and minerals into fine powders. All of you up here, I want you to think about your favorite crayon color while I'm reading, okay? And then you can tell me at the end. Mixing, slate for gray, earth for yellow, red and brown, perhaps, oh yes, and lapis for blue. Pounding, sifting, and heating the colored powders. Would they be bright enough? Edwin's team kept on trying. They kept on experimenting. They came home covered in color. Uh-oh. Has that ever happened to you? Have you become covered in color with your markers, maybe? It happens to Lucas a lot. No. They experimented some more and discovered a pinch of this pigment, a sploosh of this one, a little hotter, a little cooler. And the viola, lots of different shades. Now there were greens, oranges, violets, and pinks too. Edwin came home covered in color. Uh-oh. Look at everybody covered in color. In a large tub at the mill, Edwin's team measured out the ingredients: melted wax, clay to thicken, something for texture, colored powders. Each in just the right amount every time to make a top secret formula. Slowly, carefully stirring by hand, they poured the special formula into thin crayon-shaped molds, smaller than any other inventor's, just the right size for children's hands. The mixture cooled and hardened. Edwin watched and Edwin waited. Finally, one summer evening in June 1903, Edwin came home covered in color and announced that he'd invented a new kind of colored crayon. But what should he call it? Alice had an idea. She said, let's mix the French word cray for stick of chalk and the word ola from the word, this is gonna be hard for me, oleaginous, meaning oily, like the oily texture of the crayon wax, to invent a new word, Crayola. Edwin listened. Binney and Smith shipped out the first Crayola crayon boxes: red, orange, yellow, green, blue, violet, brown, and black, 8 colored crayons for only a nickel. Edwin waited. Would children like them? What do you think? Yeah. Do you think kids liked them? Yeah. Yes, children did. Now they could draw a tiny green caterpillar or the big blue sky. Their drawings wouldn't smudge and they wouldn't rub out. They were bright and could last a long, long time. Excitement over the new colorful invention spread like wildfire. Admirers from far and wide flocked to marvel at Binney and Smith's inventions at the St. Louis World's Fair. The company's dustless chalk even won a gold medal. Proudly, Edwin and Harold showed it off, especially on their new Crayola crayon boxes. Every day, Edwin brought colorful bouquets from his garden to inspire the Crayola team. They made crayons in even more different shades and later asked children to help name some of them. At last, because of Edwin Binney and Harold Smith, the man who saw color everywhere, who had a knack for listening and making what people needed, children all around the world could reach just for the right shade to draw anything. Did you think about your favorite color? So Lumi's favorite color is blue, and what's your favorite color, Marion? Light green and light blue. All right, please join me in singing our children to their classes.
We make a commitment, a pledge to support the ministry of our church. In addition to this contribution, every Sunday we take a collection so that we can share with those doing justice beyond our church walls. While we are unable to come together in person, you can still share your resources. Make sure your contribution, to make your contribution, you can go to our website or you can send a text to the number that will be on the screen in just a minute. Or in the sanctuary, you can put your donation in the white box at the back. For the month of April, we're sharing our plate with Bloom Haiti, and this morning we have a video.
Ok, ma petit bonjour, bonsoir avec nous dans l'église tombe, nom c'est Félix Saint-Jean, qui est directeur, fondateur, ami, école de musique, ambassadeur de musique institut. L'école ça que nous avons formé dans la zone de la plaine, c'est pour nous aider des jeunes et dans la zone qui a des difficultés Et parce que zone là, c'est une zone de non-droit. Zone de non-droit, c'est zone si nous dans la rue, si nous dans le banditisme, et nous avons fait pour nous être capables d'aider avec jouer un instrument de musique. Et à l'aide de programmes de musique, ça, il y a un peu de gens qui c'est pour des professeurs de musique, qui ont enseigné dans les institutions qui viennent à travers Haïti. Et que je ne dis pas, on a cherché fonds pour l'autre petit monde qui est dans le programme, qui a besoin d'instruments, et qui a besoin de l'école, qui est là dedans qui besoin dans l'université, et que les malades qui ont besoin de soins, c'est pour les gens ça qui fait que nous cherchons des dons partout que côté nous venons. Et que ces dons ça et par rapport avec Tom, Cloris, qui c'est les amis, non, qui c'est manager l'école ça, et que c'est par lui-même que nous venons en aide à travers des groupes Haïti, qui aident nous en pile au niveau instrument, et puis même que nous payer pour faire quelques professeurs dans le programme ça. Et que nous faisons vidéo ça, programme ça, c'est un programme qui est des jeunes en pile, dans la zone d'entraînement, et ce n'est pas zone d'entraînement seulement, Cité Soleil, Cabaret, et toute zone qui entoure le programme. Le programme ça est des jeunes en pile. Et le programme ça est des jeunes et contre la drogue, ne pas tomber dans la drogue, ne pas tomber dans la prostitution, ne pas tomber dans ça ou la délinquance juvénile. Tout ça, c'est ça que la musique fait, c'est pour voir la musique ça. Et que c'est pour ça que nous avons créé l'école musique là, pour aider les jeunes qui sont dans la zone. C'est en résumé, c'est ça, et que nous espérons que ça suffit pour que les chrétiens qui sont dans l'église comprennent la situation en Haïti, qu'on a une situation plus difficile que jamais avec le problème de sécurité, mais nous connaissons qu'avec l'aide de bon Dieu et que tout bagarre est fait. Merci.
And now please join Dave in reciting our offertory words, which will also appear on the screen. This church is the community of ourselves. Its energy and resources are our energy and resources. Its wealth is what we share. As we contribute to the life of this community, we affirm it and enable its participation in the larger world around us. The offering will now be generously given
and gratefully received.
I invite you now into the spirit of prayer and meditation. Let us begin by breathing together. Take a breath in and out. Feel the power within you and around you. The past is gone. The future has not yet been created. All we have is now. Calm your thoughts and come wholly into the space of community. We begin in thanks, thankful for the breath in our lungs, the beauty of our earth, and the strength of this community. We hold in our hearts all those in our community who are missing people today. We hold close all those who care for family in ill health, those who live with grief or chronic pain, those struggling with addiction or illness, seen or unseen. We are with you. On this Earth Day weekend, we pray for our planet and commit to work and choices that will lead us away from the harms of climate change. We pray that wisdom, compassion, and empathy guide the leaders of our world. May they and we be instruments of a just and lasting peace. Our lives are blessed by those who knowingly, with curiosity and courage, face their final days. Into this shared silence, I invite you now to speak the name of anyone you wish to lift up into the loving support of this community. With our deepest compassion, let us hold in our hearts those named and unnamed, those remembered and those forgotten. Let it be so. Amen, and blessed be. During our ritual of candle lighting for our joys and concerns, we want to continue to maintain our safety. In the 2U sanctuary, you're invited to come forward and light a candle. As your time of contemplation and candle lighting, as you end it, we invite you to use the hand sanitizer. For those at the Admiral, I invite you to come forward and take a petal from one bowl, hold it tightly, putting your energy into the stone, and then knowing that your joys and sorrows are shared by this community, let it go lightly into the other bowl. For those of us on Zoom, join us by sharing your joys and concerns in the chat window, and I will light 2 candles here, one representing all our unspoken joys and another for all our unspoken sorrows. hold all these joys, celebrations, sorrows, and struggles close to our hearts. Our first reading this morning is from Michelle Obama's book, The Light We Carry. Michelle shares about a visit with the Girls' Opportunity Alliance, where a Chicago girl shared her experiences during COVID. She was spending her time caring for her grandmother, working a part-time job, avoiding the troublemakers on her block, and finishing high school so she could attend college to study culinary arts. And she was tired. "It's all just pounding down," Deanna said. Though with a quick shrug, she seemed to reverse herself back towards brightness. "But I know I can do it, so it ain't really that stressful." She looked around at the group, the nodding heads of the other girls, and then tacked on one last acknowledgement, "But it is." At which point everyone smiled, bobbing their heads even more. I recognized what Deanna was saying, this idea that we're all nodding at, that internal back and forth on how tough or not we've got it. A day can feel hard and not hard. A challenge can seem giant and then maybe conquerable. And then 2 hours later, it's overwhelming all over again. It depends not just on your circumstances, but also on your mood, your attitude, your stance, all of which can change in an instant. We get pumped up and knocked down by the smallest of factors, whether the sun is shining, how your hair looks, how we slept, how we ate or didn't eat, whether someone bothers to look kindly at us or not. We may or may not acknowledge out loud all of the other forces that knock so many of us down, the social conditions shaped by generations of systemic oppression, but of course they are there. And now I'd like to invite David to read the second reading at the Admiral.
Our second reading is taken from the Entrepreneur's Weekly Nietzsche by Brad Felt and Dave Jilk. And it begins with a quote from Brad. "Seeing our light shining in the darkest hour of depression, sickness, and guilt, we are still glad to see others taking a light from us and making use of us as the disk of the moon. By this roundabout route, we derive some light from our own illuminating facility. In other words, when we're depressed and everything seems bleak, we take some comfort in the way people respond to us." Brad has written and spoken extensively about depression among entrepreneurs, as well as his own experiences with depression. Nietzsche, too, may have suffered from it. Though there is no solution to depression, this quote offers a palliative that might ease the pain of emptiness. It may also be helpful even if you are not clinically depressed, but things are going badly. You've made a big mistake or are struggling with anxiety about something. As an entrepreneur, you are a leader. Your co-founders, your team, and to some extent, your customers and investors all work with you because you play an important and positive role for them. They see you as a light in their lives. It is completely irrelevant in your present dark hour whether you think this is justified or important. The fact that your light shines is inescapable, and recognizing it is not an act of ego or vanity, but simply one of acknowledging reality. Once you have recognized this reality, you can observe your light's reflection. It is visible even if you are inclined to say, so what? Observe how your presence changes and animates discussion. Observe how people respond to your requests and questions. Notice the level of motivation in your organization, even in difficult times, and recognize that you selected these people and they selected you to work with. Watch for the reflection and the effects of your light shining. Don't minimize it. Just see it like you see the illumination of the moon. If a sense of detachment accompanies your mental state, use that to help see things as a disinterested other observer. You have not recognized the importance in other people's lives and observed and experienced how you affect them. These are simple facts. You may elect to make judgments about these facts in your depressed state. You might dismiss them as unimportant. Sometimes imposter syndrome is a component of depression. In that case, you may have thought that these people are making a mistake or that you are a fraud. This does not change the fact that your own light reflecting off these people and your role in their lives has now reflected back on you. You may not enjoy or appreciate it in your depressed state, but it is there and worth acknowledging. No matter how dark the world may seem, it would be darker without you. It would also be darker if you did not have the other people to reflect your light. And now the choir will present our anthem.
We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these fires. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we reveal ourselves into the world. It is time now for a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to live in love. In this great turning we shall learn to live in love. We shall be known by the company we keep, by the ones who circle round to tend these lives. We shall be known by the ones who sow and reap the seeds of change alive from deep within the earth. It is time now. It is time now that we thrive. It is time we lead ourselves into the world. It is time now. What a time to be alive. In this great turning we shall learn to live in love. In this great strengthening we shall learn to be in love.
Hello, beloved community. I'm Laura McKee, she, her, and I've been a member of 2U since 1988, more than half my life. So the true story of why I'm sharing today dates back to Reverend Jason's candidating week. The search committee, which included my darling husband, Tom, along with Berlinda, Judy, Tyler, David, Jill, and Shauna, was giving Rev J exposure to a broad cross-section of 2U so that he could decide whether he really wanted to settle with us, and we could decide whether we could settle with him. I have a very clear memory of Berlinda hosting a lunch at Stella's, during which Monica Drain, Rev J, Berlinda, and I had a thoughtful conversation. After discussing our various spiritual journeys and the immense potential for 2U's impact in the world, Monica sheepishly asked a question that could have been a turning point in our relationship. "So Rev J," she said, "I saw on your Twitter profile that you're an anarchist. What does that actually mean?" And Rev J, as I recall, said among other things, "Well, I believe that the allocation of resources in our world is unjust and that workers do not get their fair share." And he very eloquently expressed a few other perspectives, to which I eventually responded, Does that mean you're anti-capitalist?" To which he said, "Yes, I'm anti-capitalist." To which I said, "Well, I've spent the last decade of my life or more building a company and creating something from nothing, and I have a pretty keen understanding of how hard that is and why entrepreneurs can reasonably expect a high return on their efforts and resources." And we had a very interesting exchange in which, again, as I recall, we agreed that the gap between CEOs and the ultra-rich and frontline workers far exceeds any measure of hard work and reasonableness. And I recall feeling that the listening and the conversation left room for a variety of views on the costs and benefits of anarchism, capitalism, and entrepreneurship as concepts. So when the Admiral at the Lake CEO recently asked me to speak to her team in my capacity as board chair and experienced entrepreneur, I thought I might have enough to say to have another lay service. So much, in fact, that my editors tell me that I may have another sermon. And I know that Rev J and the rest of you will listen to my perspectives, challenge me to think more deeply, and to help me lead an ethical life. It's really hard to have this conversation now, without reflecting on some warped society views glamorizing the likes of Jeff Bezos and Elon Musk and the ridiculous inequity that has expanded in the last 30 years. In fact, it's difficult for me to process the degree to which the world has changed just in my lifetime in that regard. According to Pew Research, in 1968, close to my birth, the top earning quintile accounted for 43% of the nation's income, whereas in 2018, it accounted for 52%. Moreover, the racial gap in median income has increased from $24,000 to $33,000 in 2018 dollars between white and Black families. In 1989, when I was new to Chicago, the richest 25% of families had 114 times as much wealth as the second quintile, whereas today, that number has more than doubled to 248 times. The entrepreneurs and investors of color that I know view the risks that they take as entrepreneurs as their best chance of making up that wealth gap. And thank goodness to the 2U community for embracing me to encourage both my hippie and yuppie sides. A recurring theme in my career, whether it was working in consulting, teaching math in the Peace Corps, working my various corporate jobs, or being an entrepreneur, is how can I use my time and talents to create the most value in the world? And what is value? As I learned from both the classical economics and Marxist economics that I studied in college, it's a store of worth that represents the fruits of both labor and capital in the creation of goods and services. Sam Williamson, a professional economist, can tell you much more about this than I can, so I had him read a draft of this sermon. And according to Sam's website, Measuring Worth, measures of worth are tricky. Quote, clearly intrinsic values, objects, and events are difficult, if not impossible, to measure in money terms. There's probably no objective way of assessing the worth of freedom, freedom of speech, good health, or a beautiful sunset, unquote. Nevertheless, money as a representation of value works as what the preponderance of people say it is. The history of currency points to society's need to share a belief and trust in representations of value. And our economy functions according to certain principles of economics that have been demonstrated through empirical analysis and math. For example, it's generally shown that when demand exceeds supply, prices rise, and when supply exceeds demand, prices fall. Sorry about that, Swifties. Nevertheless, the function of markets is subject to the forces of politics and power in general. Damn you, Ticketmaster. And crucially, the initial allocation of resources, whether capital or time, can be unequal. I feel very privileged with lots of freedom to choose how I spend my time and money. While by the miracle of our existence, every human has the same 24 hours in a day, how we choose to spend that time varies widely due to the constraints of environment, family, and societal pressures, as well as choice. The choice of how we spend our time may truly be the most fundamental economic and spiritual decision that we make. When we perform a job that pays more than our basic needs, we can store some of that value and that we've created in the form of savings. Then we have more choices for how to allocate these resources and can choose to spend our time and money on more goods and services or experiences or supporting the institutions and causes that we love, like 2U. Isn't it empowering to think about how we spend our time? Let's face it, it is our most valuable resource. They're not making any more of it. And as a therapist once said to me, you have to spend your waking time somehow. So choosing work and leisure that matter is a healthy choice. So the story of how I became an entrepreneur is due to the goddess of serendipity. When I was fired from my strategy gig for McDonald's largest vendor, it was 2009. It was kind of a tough time to find another high-paid strategy gig. I was fortunate that I had the flexibility and Tom's patience to take some time and really consider what I wanted and how I wanted to spend my time and talents. I was spending every day, all day, doing whatever I wanted, from taking a food tour of Chicago with Barb to applying to various jobs, and someone sent me the link to the Amazing Race open casting call. As fans of the show well know, you need a partner, and Tom is a lovely guy, but he does not want to be on TV. So I got my friend David, my high school prom date, to come out to Harrah's and Joliet with me, and we met some very interesting people who also thought they belonged on TV. And part of our rap was that if we won, we would use the winnings to develop a DVD to help kids on the autism spectrum. David's son had come home from school one day and said he had no friends. They really struggled. And so when David shared with me his vision, I had the time and skills to help him get it off the ground. So I pitched the idea at an entrepreneurship seminar at the University of Chicago as Baby Einstein meets Sesame Street for special kids. And an amazing businesswoman who was running that program approached me after my pitch. Ellen Rudnick said to me, "You seem passionate about autism. I have a friend who's launching a business for kids on the spectrum." Well, I knew this much about autism at the time, but I'm pretty passionate about whatever I'm doing. And she didn't know that I'd spent several years at Sears Home Services, so I know stuff about managing a distributed network of people and supporting them with technology and process. And so when I saw the business plan talking about the 1 in 110 kids on the autism spectrum, it seemed like a big opportunity to really make a difference, and the founder really needed help. And truly, that many dominoes do not fall unless you're called to do something. So AHSS grew from that business plan on paper at the trough of the Great Recession to more than 900 employees and 3 states. There were so many learnings along the way, from the challenges of meeting payroll, sleepless nights, to managing technology risks, unexpected problems. And most important to our success was building a team and meeting their needs by providing a professional experience along with the wages that they found fulfilling, at least most of the time. And the pain of working without a salary for a couple of years eventually faded. When we sold the company in 2017, it was a bittersweet experience. I was so proud of the thousands of kids that we'd helped and the thousands of behavioral therapists that we'd trained and brought into a wonderful team. During the process of selling the company, we talked with dozens of private equity and venture investors, and during the process, I thought that I would stay on with the new owners. And yet, when they didn't want me, it seemed that the goddess of serendipity was looking out for me again. Mom and Dad had moved to Chicago. Just a few months before my deal went through, Mom was diagnosed with Alzheimer's, and my brother-in-law was diagnosed with stage 4 lung cancer. To have the savings and the time to spend where it was most valuable was truly a blessing. And yet I was confronted again with that question that we're all confronted with every day. Where should I spend my time and talents now? Being Mortal, Atul Gawande's book about the American healthcare system and our challenges of fighting an ageist culture, became a real jumping off place for me. In it, he makes clear that every human has to confront their own mortality. Gawande argues that the only way to do it well is to have the difficult conversations with your loved ones about what your wishes are once your time here on Earth is close to an end. Our healthcare system has a brutal way of intervening to the maximum extent possible versus allowing people to choose the quality and quantity of life that they wish. And I'm so grateful to Reverend Elizabeth and others for educating us on these matters as well. Having led a healthcare services organization and experiencing the frustrations of dealing with insurance companies, and also seeing significant investment going into innovation in healthcare, I was curious if I could take what I learned at AHSS and apply it to a new venture. And since my 2 MBA parents, not just Dad, but Mom also, MBAs, encouraged me to go into business, it seemed appropriate to find ways to help them, along with the 10,000 baby boomers turning 65 every day. And again, my mentor, Ellen, introduced me to Asif Khan, who is a second-time entrepreneur as well. Asif had a business plan for Huku.ai, that's Latin for Hook Cure, which means care anywhere. And once again, when I saw the business plan, it seemed like a really good idea to solve a very real problem. Asif and I did what they call founder dating for a while to see if we could work together to launch a company. And when one of my networking contacts contacted us 6 months after we'd pitched them, we knew we had something that was not just valuable in our own minds, but that actual customers might want. So now I'm 4 years into my second venture, which makes me a serial entrepreneur. It's like childbirth, I believe. You forget all the work and pain of giving birth and remember the miracles of being a parent. And Asif and I are working hard to build a team that shares our values, which we've articulated of being heart, unifying, committed, and unflinching transparent. It's been a real joy to have customers tell us how much we've helped them and to have a team that sometimes rhapsodize about the fun they're having writing code and marketing our baby. We're making progress on our vision to reduce suffering by making communication and care coordination ubiquitous and easy so healthcare teams don't burn out and patients get better care. So my message to you at this point is thank you for your support through all the ups and downs of building new things. There have been days when I've been discouraged and you have cheered me up. There have been times when I needed you to reflect my truths, knowing that living a life of meaning matters. And you help me do that. And as I continue along this spiritual journey, I hope that you will continue to challenge me to be my best self, to spend my time and talents on those things that truly do create value. Spending time and contributing to this community make it worthwhile for me. Please join me in rising in body or spirit and singing our closing hymn, number 118, This Little Light of Mine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it shine. This little light of mine, I'm gonna let it Carl makes everything rock. All right, the benediction is from a poem by former 2U minister Lynn Unger titled Accounting. How easy is it to get pulled under by the riptide of numbers, the grip of statistics dragging us out in their litany of loss? Some numbers are too large to reckon, knowing that each number is a life. We don't yet know how to mourn the particulars of those sums. For now, count the smaller things. Raindrops on the roof, thousands. Comfort in a time of drought. Trees visible from my window, 6. One decked in fluffy pom-poms of spring. Eggs in the refrigerator, 8. Enough for breakfast and possibly cake. Birds in the bush, 2. Nattily attired in black and russet spots. Dogs at my feet, also 2. Both happy that we're together. I don't know if there's some grand accounting in the end, a God who will weigh your soul against a feather. It seems unlikely, but one way or another, it's probably worth considering what counts. Oops, I forgot to have you rest your hands on your heart and hold hands. I think we need the professional minister back in the pulpit next week. But please, go now in peace.